So we are diving in on a topic that I find very fascinating for our next speaker. We are going to learn about the Internet of Elephants. What on earth is an Internet of Elephants? Well, if we are going to engage people, if we are going to get a wide new audience captivated by nature and keen to help support it and conserve it, we are going to need to reach them in new ways. A lot of conservation work can be preaching to the choir. It can be connecting with people that already know and support and love wildlife, and they've loved it since they were kids. And to really change that game, we need to find new approaches to do just that. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Gautam Shah. He is the founder of Internet of Elephants. He's going to tell us a little bit about some of their groundbreaking work today. Thank you so much for joining us, Gautam, and take us away.
Yeah, hello. Thanks so much. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah.
Great. I will go ahead and share the right screen, hopefully.
Yeah,
super.
Perfect.
Fantastic to be here with everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me. Yes, my name is Gautam Shah, and I have started a company called Internet of Elephants, and today's talk is going to be about the use of games as the future of, or in my opinion, the future of wildlife storytelling. Just a little bit about me. These are all photographs from before I got into wildlife conservation. Actually, my background is as an IT consultant. I used to work for a large IT consulting company called Accenture. It's got about 400,000 people on it. But what I would do with all my free time is I would travel the world and I would spend it with chimpanzees and whale sharks and grizzly bears and and you name it. I did that for 20 years, and it just eventually it just started to feel. Well, I just started to feel very, very selfish. I was experiencing all this wildlife that was made possible in many ways by incredible conservationists around the world, and I was doing nothing to contribute back to it. And so I essentially quit a perfectly good job and decided to get into conservation. Now, one of the questions that I'm most frequently asked is, as if it's something really, really unique, is when did you start? When did you first get your passion for wildlife? When did you first really start loving wildlife? And I kind of feel like, okay, my answer is probably the same as anybody. As a kid, everybody as a child is inundated with animals. Your toys are animals. Your movies are animals. Your books are about animals. Even your clothes and your bed sheets and everything has got animals on it. We're just naturally attracted to animals. Maybe wildlife, maybe domestic, but that's a very natural thing to feel attracted to feel a connection to as a kid. And, I don't think my story is really any different than most people around the world. But the reality is that eventually life takes over, and there isn't the opportunity or the maybe the thought process that that goes into connecting with wildlife. You've got boyfriends and girlfriends to think about. You've got your job to think about. You've got, television shows, sports, all these other things that are kind of consuming your attention. And the connection, not the caring, but the connection with wildlife, the connection with conservation, the connection with nature is just something that, that starts to erode. The issue with that is it's that connection, it's that will of the the will of the people, it's that buy-in to nature that's so critical to us doing anything like Marco was talking about the future. If you don't have the buy-in, if you don't have the will of the people, it's going to be harder to get the politicians. It's going to be harder to get the corporates. It's going to be harder to get the financing. And so what have we done about that? And I realize this is somewhat simplifying, but if I think about it, and as I started to kind of look into what are the different ways that are used to engage audiences with wildlife, really kind of found 5 major categories, each with, one or multiple drawbacks, all of which with some potential benefits. Arguably, but you've got donation campaigns and nature documentaries, which again are working. They do something, but they also reach a pretty limited audience. And Jesse mentioned preaching to the choir. Then you've got zoos, which again are again, in my opinion, have a lot of positive things that they can do in terms of connecting people in urban populations with wildlife that they'd otherwise never have the opportunity to connect with. But I think we all know the collateral damage that can, that can be done, especially for zoos that are kind of not on the up and up. And then you have some things, sort of in the middle that both have a limited audience as well as have collateral damage. You've got trophy hunting and you've got wildlife tourism. And as I kind of looked across the last 70 years, my feeling was it's not changing. It's not changing that much. And if it's not changing that much, how can we expect anything in the, in the future to change? But we also started to look at this and see, well, actually, there's some amazing things happening. There's some amazing opportunities. So what are the opportunities? And there's many. I'm going to focus in on, just a few. And one is there is a younger population that is expressing and people are listening to what they think about the environment, to what they think about nature, to what they think about many social, many social causes. So it's not just a more woke youth at this point, but it's also they've got the opportunity, they've got the mediums, they've got the channels to go ahead and express themselves. So if we look, at that generation, there's a desire to have things be different. Related and unrelated is what are people, and not just that generation, but what are people spending their time on? And they're spending their time on playing games. There's 2.7 billion worldwide gamers, and that's mobile. That's mobile alone. And this year they're going to spend $160 billion in the process of playing games. And I forgot what the number of hours is. It's in the 50 billion or above in terms of the amount of time that they're going to actually spend on games. So we started to really kind of look into this a little bit more. And I'd just like to touch on games a little. One of the things that I found really interesting was, I think we calculated out probably around $300 to $400 million a year being spent on nature documentaries and almost nothing being spent on games about nature. And when we really started looking at games and the advantages that they had, it's phenomenal. You're active. You're not sitting back on the sofa. You're involved. You're pressing buttons. You're in it. You're part of the story. You're part of the story. And you're part of the story because you've got an identity, you've got a role to play. Maybe that role is yourself, maybe that role is a character within the game, but there's characteristics. You are somebody that is, that is part of the story. You've got agency. You're going to make decisions in the game. You're going to decide the outcome of what happens to you or the outcome of what happens to characters, to characters within the game. That's an opportunity to make decisions. Again, you're not passive, you're active. The feedback loop is almost immediate. You know whether you're getting better. You know whether the decisions that you're making are improving things, worsening things, and for whatever game that happens to be. But there's an immediate response to everything that you do. And then there's social. You can play with other people. You can express yourself. You can collaborate with others. You can have bragging rights. That there's many opportunities for it to be something that you can share with one other person, or you can share with millions of other people. And so all the advantages of games, and then when you add to that it transcends geography, it transcends sex, it transcends income levels, it transcends age. It's something that can be applied across the board. So we really started looking at games like, wow, there's just an opportunity here. Next, we started really looking at what's going on within the conservation sector, and what are the changes? What's different from how it might have been 30 years ago, or 50 years ago, or even 10 years ago to how it is now. And again, there's other examples, but jumping out at me, and perhaps I'm biased with my IT background, was the proliferation of the use of technology, how technology is being used for scientific research, how technology is being used for interventions on the ground, for data, for data analysis, and even a little bit for public engagement. And all of that data that's now, all of that technology that's now being used is resulting in an incredible amount of data. Data that might be associated with just presence and absence, data around diet, eDNA, camera traps, acoustic technology, all of this data is being collected by thousands of different people in different forms, and of course the data is incredible for scientific purposes. But one of the things that we really started looking at that data and seeing was we were seeing stories. We were seeing stories within the data, stories about the animals, stories about the habitat, stories about the people that are collecting the data. And again, I'm going to be a little bit simplistic here and say that the majority of that data is ending up in scientific journals, which of course have their purpose and have their need. But what an opportunity, what an asset that the conservation world has that's potentially not being optimized. And that's, all of these insights together kind of helped me decide to start Internet of Elephants. So what does Internet of Elephants do exactly? And I'm going to show you some examples, but essentially we take all of the scientific data, all the scientific journals, and we try and create games and interactive media and interactive opportunities for people to engage with that data, for people to hear the stories, for people to play the stories, for people to be part of those stories. And so that's where I want to give you a few examples now of what I mean by that. So when we first started, conceptually, we were just trying to figure out, like, well, what can we do with GPS data, for example? Can you create a story just with dots on a screen, or dots over a landscape? So one of the very first things that we did was we tried that out, and I'll give you a short example of that.
Fleur and Valentine are sisters who adolescent cubs near Lake Elementita. As a pride, they remain close to each other 90% of the time for protection, cooperative hunting, and social bonding. When Valentine is ready to find a mate, she makes 2 trips into the adjoining Nakuru National Park. She remains in the area for approximately 3 days each time, probably accompanied by a male lion. On her second trip back to her pride, we see that something is blocking her way. The once non-functioning electric fence has been fixed, and she cannot get through. Valentine becomes stressed and hungry, and nearly dies. Researchers intervene to transport Valentine back to Fleur and the rest of the pride. Soon after, she gives birth to 3 new cubs.
So that's we made a few examples of that, and we felt very, very good about it, and we can tell a story from the data, but again, as you can tell, that's a very passive experience. It's kind of like watching a nature documentary. So then we started thinking about, okay, how can we do something that makes it a little bit more active? How can we take some of this data, all this information about animals, etc., and get people involved in it? And we started to explore augmented reality, and what could you do with augmented reality? How could you express your love of animals through augmented reality? And here's a little example of something that you can do with augmented reality. So all of that was done just in a short afternoon using the app on my mobile phone. We then started to look at, okay, now let's think about different ways that we can actually engage mass audiences with wildlife data, and we partnered very luckily with Adidas to use their fitness app called Adidas Running, and we're using GPS data of real animals to give you the chance, using that fitness app, to compare how far you could run in a particular day with how much that animal actually ran, based on the caller data that we were receiving. It wasn't live, don't worry, but at the same time, it was real. It was over a period of time, and every day, you essentially would find out how much you ran using a fitness tracker that you would already use anyhow, and now you could compare yourself over a 10-day period last year with a Johnny the elephant from Angola, or Tendril the tiger from Bhutan, or Pamoja the pangolin from Kenya, depending on what you felt your fitness level was. Every day you would know how much you ran, but you would also get insights into what these animals did, what their day would look like. Of course, fictionalized, but what's the life of a pangolin like? What are the things that they do if they were running? And they were posting about it? What are the types of things that they would be talking about? And so, with a little bit of humor and obviously a lot of help from Adidas, in a 10-day period of time, we were able to get, I think, 1.1 million people to run with these animals. We'll be doing it again. We'll be doing it again this year. We then started to look into can we gamify this a little bit more? Can we create a really deep experience around all of it? And so we created a game called Wilderverse. Wilderverse is a game that uses augmented reality, and it creates a futuristic virtual world wherever you are, and then it represents Sebangau Forest in Borneo and Ndoki National Park in Congo. You play the role of a researcher exploring those forests to study 4 real apes: Fio the orangutan, Chili the white-bearded gibbon, Ida the chimpanzee, and Buka the lowland gorilla. But you also need to find clues about their life and the health of the forest by locating the fruit, nests, poop, water levels, and all the other things that researchers might do. And you have to physically move around to do it, but you can do it all from the comfort of your own home or your backyard. And the last example I'm going to give you is something that we did as part of our Nat Geo Fellowship, and we decided to change the type of data we were looking at. We partnered up with Wild Crew, and they had just conducted a 10-year camera trap study, over 5 million camera trap photos that they had taken in Southeast Asia. And we tried to think okay, how can we, again, this is stuff that's fantastic. It's ending up in journals. People don't know about it. How can we bring people into that particular study? And I'll just show you a quick trailer of something we created called Unseen Empire, which is essentially what we think is a gamified data visualization of all this data. So again, you can explore 34 different sites, the real sites of the study. You place the cameras, and you start to see the photographs start coming through. And the main point of the game is to try and identify these animals. But all along the while, of course, getting the rewards, the badges, the different types of gamification, and learning about, 250 different species that I'll bet even most of us have never, I've even heard about. Now, I've kind of given you some examples of some of the games that we've created, or some of the experiences that we've created, and that's all we do. But that's not to say that there aren't other amazing products that are out there that really bring wildlife, to players and to audiences in different ways. So a couple of the ones that we really like that we that way has not been released yet, but actively awaiting it. But beautiful representations of the underwater world and Beyond Blue. Shelter 2 is a very emotional look at how in the life of a lynx. Alba's a little bit more focused on kids and conservation, and in a way is well, I'll let you guys experience it when you have the chance. So all in all, that's my talk for today. I fully believe in games for the power to engage, for the power to change attitudes, for the power to generate revenue, and for the power of storytelling. Yeah, thanks so much for having me here today, and thank you very much.
Yeah, how cool was that? As a lifelong gamer, it's not only exciting to see the technological potential, but just as something that I would want to use personally. I mean, that is a very, very cool thing you've got going there, Gautam. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm curious what the feedback has been. You talked about getting over 1 million people through this partnership with Adidas getting it on board, which is amazing. Have you had people reach out to you to say, look, I never went out in nature before, or I never thought of it this way, and now I do because of your games? Have you had that sort of support?
I think so. You know, certainly not at the volume that we need, but something like a campaign with Adidas. You know, these are the things that are really, really critical, because we can make fantastic products, but it's the partnerships with organizations like Adidas, National Geographic, etc., that are going to really make that happen. What's fantastic, you know, on the Adidas side, what's really good is you're reaching a completely different audience. You know, I mean, it's not that athletes are not nature lovers. In many cases, they are, but they're not necessarily targeted with wildlife and with wildlife stories. So when the feedback comes in from those runners and they really enjoy the stories, and you see that activation for how much somebody runs when the campaign's not happening versus how much people run when the campaign is happening, in a way, is a little bit of a proxy for how motivated and how engaged people are, with that content.
Yeah, it's been thrilling generally over the last few years to see nature marketing go from just people. I had a program the other day with a pangolin researcher. She's going to be on later in our festival, and she talked about the fact that the people she worked with in West Africa were treated as like the nature nerds, the people who just loved animals. They were that one weird guy, and now they have the respect of the community sort of thing. But it's been interesting seeing how health and education and all these different avenues are being tied into nature education in such a meaningful way. And I think that all your work really speaks to that. By the way, I'm not sure what I like more, the cheetah trying to get on the subway or the pangolin getting a little excited about the person's calf there. That was really fun stuff. Now, without breaking any intellectual property things and not revealing some of your biggest secrets, what's next for this? I mean, I think the question with technology is what's down the pipeline? Where can you go with this in the future?
Yeah. Well, one is we want to expand on Wilderverse. We want to expand on Unseen Empire, so that they're now focusing on different parts of the world. So you can kind of continuously scale by visiting new national parks and new research projects and new camera trap studies. So that, that's one thing, is you always have to kind of invest in building upon what you've created. You never get it right the first time. One of the very fun things that I'm really trying to work on, right now, is a game that's associated with acoustics and with mimicking animal sounds.
Okay.
And creating a little bit of a party game, and it's all about the vocalizations and the roles that vocalizations play in nature. But again, by you trying to do your best gibbon imitation as possible. But on a larger scale, we're now really looking at, well, how can we now start turning some of this data into a new marketplace and a new revenue generation opportunity? So all this data is both being used for engagement, but can actually now be starting to be converted into new revenue streams.
Yeah, fantastic. Good for you guys. And financing, making conservation possible does require it to be something that's commodified to an extent. And I think that's one of the themes that's sort of been shared in a lot of our programs so far. And there's a lot of programs to come on that. And so kudos to you guys for doing a really fantastic job of that. And it's been a real pleasure to chat with you. Is there a last message? If people want to learn more, if they want to get involved with these games themselves, is it just to go to internet@elephants.com and see all the products that you guys have, or are there apps, anything that we can share out so that people, when they're done, can go and take part?
I think the easiest thing in the shortest period of time is go to internet@elephants.com. You can get to all of the stuff that we've created, from there. Hopefully some people took some screenshots of the slide of the other games that we're recommending. Yeah. Jackson Wild's going to give an award this year for best wildlife game, which is something that they've not done before. So hopefully all of this is starting to build, and of course anybody can just contact me directly with any questions or ideas.
Fantastic. Well, I'm certainly heading to the website after I'm done my next hosting gig. And thank you so much, Gautam, for sharing some time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jesse.
Awesome. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon.